Intifada. It happened during the first Intifada. I served in a unit in which the main focus was in the northern border and inside Lebanon. Hezbollah was still a relatively new organization, and we whipped them down to the ground. One time, my unit received an order to help in the arrest of fugitives in the West Bank. So, we went down from Lebanon. The service in the West Bank was calm for us. To mingle among the civilian population with the life of bustling trade and culture has always been better than lying in an ambush in Bint al-Jabal or Hayr-Bit Sloom. There are soldiers who feel power in controlling the civilian population, and the power of their rule was expressed through armed force, whether it's needed or not. I, for one, really enjoyed this power of controlling the civilian population. At the age of 20, it filled me with a sense of superiority. But I did not express this through aggression, rather as forgiveness. I enjoyed giving to the subjects. It gave me a sense of mighty power. One night, we and the security services personnel went to apprehend the fugitives. With us was Jesus, a local snitch, who puts finger on houses of teenage boys and adults who participated in instituted disturbances. We arrested them one by one without special problems. I sat on the corner, puffing rings of cigarette smoke, indifferent to what was happening around me. Honestly, those prisoners didn't look like mischievous children to me. I preferred to execute my army service in Lebanon, where real war occurred. In the transport van, there was a 14-year-old boy whom my colleagues asked him aggressively to lower his head in order not to see the people involved in the arrest. But he refused and said, "A PLO soldier doesn't lower his head." My colleagues lowered his head with terrifying hand, but the boy turned back and looked at me. I felt sympathy for his actions. I approached him and explained to him that if he will not comply, the Israeli soldiers will lower it by force. I started to talk to him, mostly about his personal life, and I got the impression of a very intelligent boy. The conversation flowed and explored to all kinds of fields, except politics, physics, mathematics, literature, philosophy, geography. The conversation was all in English. I understood that the boy was unusual to his environment, and I asked him, "What will you do when you grow up?" "I want to study medicine in Italy, to be a doctor." "So, and this way, do you think you will be a doctor?" I growled at him. He shut up. "Why do you want to be a doctor?" I asked. "To help my brothers here," he said. We continued talking, and after a few minutes, I withdrew and went to lit another cigarette. When I returned, I got down on my knees and looked at him. "Will you promise me to continue to study and then go to study medicine?" He looked at me. He couldn't understand my question. I repeated my question, and he shook his head positively. Still couldn't understand what I want from him. I took out the knife from my vest, cut the handcuffs that were on his hands, took off the blindfold, and told him, "Albeit go home." He looked at me in shock. He was frightened and suspicious. "Well, go. Just go." He stood there shaking. "Do not be afraid. I won't shoot you. Go be a doctor. This nonsense of the Intifada is not for you." With hesitant steps, he began to step back, still looking at me. When he got into a distance where he felt more secure, he turned around and started a fast sprint to freedom. I will not expand the argument I had with the personnel of the security services. I just said, that his charges were just stone-throwing to a certain crowd, something which seemed to be a minor to me. That's all. Oh, I forgot to mention a small detail. At the age of 34, I was sitting on the couch in the living room with my baby on my lap, half yawning, half sleepy. The TV was stuck in a certain science channel, and I was half watching, and no concentration at all. It was a documentary show about doctors from a volunteer organization who came to the territories to administer current medical care for Palestinian children in the West Bank. Among them was a young doctor who was asked by the interviewer, what's his opinion about these Israeli and Palestinian conflicts? And the doctor replied, I do not deal with politics, I deal in pediatrics. And he continued, when I was 14, I was arrested by the Israeli army. There was a soldier. I think he was their commander. We talked and had a conversation. Then suddenly he released me from handcuffs. I was scared. A big smile was on my face. I was full of pride and excitement. My son fell asleep on my shoulder. I kissed him and took him to his bed. Silent night had passed by. Our troops